That you were going to start us out.
Oh, we didn't discuss that part. Hello, everyone. Welcome back.
Yeah, well. So we wanted to jump on today because we are celebrating, maybe that's the right word, celebrating 1 year of full-time RVing.
Celebrating that. Because we're going to continue RVing.
At least for another day. So I think we wanted to jump on and yes, celebrate with all of you, but share some of the things that we've learned, some things that we're still learning, the challenges that we run into, some exciting things. You know, whether we want to keep doing it or not, and just kind of all the stuff that has happened over the past year. So, well, do you have a specific place you want to start?
I was actually just going to start with a rundown of kind of everywhere we've been, and then we can go back through and touch on them as we go. Or
all right.
So I'm going to start off in Goodyear, Arizona, where we wintered last year. The Destiny RV Park, or Destiny RV Resort. It was not an RV park. There is a difference. People don't know there is a difference between an RV resort and an RV park. Huge difference. But not all RV resorts are equal either. So
right.
But so our first stop when we hit the road May 1st.
Well, can we even back up there though? Because we were at Destiny, but then in February we took a mini trip to Colorado. Right. And I want to highlight that because I think that's where the itch really started. Like we were really ready to go. Like we thought we wanted to go before that, but getting on the road and going back to Colorado for a couple of weeks, I think really pushed us over that edge of wanting to get on the road and excited for the actual travel part. So I don't want to miss that because I think that was pivotal in just learning and kind of getting the itch and what exploring might be like. So dealing with cold temperatures and weather and, just the animals and, how we were going to handle things. So I just don't want to skip over that part. So Arizona, Colorado, stayed in Amarillo for a night, stayed in New Mexico, a couple places in New Mexico, and then back to Arizona, and then went full traveling the beginning of May. Right? Okay.
And our first stop, not an overnight, I guess, but our first actual full stay was in Spring Branch, Texas, just north of San Antonio. So that was a quiet little park. Had some highway noise just right off of the highway, but there's a ton to do in that area with San Antonio and Austin and New Braunfels. Definitely probably an area we'll be back to at some point in time.
Yeah.
And we went from there to one of our most favorite places on earth, Port Isabel, which is between South Padre Island and Brownsville, right there on the coast. And that's, I don't know, we just love South Padre Island, and it's not super touristy and quiet and clean. So. From there, we went to Lafayette, Louisiana. That was something I was going to bring up. Locals in some of these areas as you travel are very particular on how they pronounce the names of their cities that they live in. And what is Lafayette in Colorado is definitely Lafayette in Louisiana. And well, we are currently in.
Don't get too ahead of yourself here.
All right.
You said you were going to come back to them. We're going to talk about each of them.
All right.
So don't get too far ahead, but
So we went from Lafayette, Louisiana, to Foley, Alabama.
Mm-hmm. Which is pretty close to like Gulf Shores. So it's like Gulf Shores area in Alabama.
There we went to Columbia, South Carolina. Just kind of smack dab center, really.
Yeah.
Columbia, South Carolina. We went to actually back to Alabama.
Mm-hmm.
We did a week in Elkmont, Alabama. And then we did a week in Hernando, Mississippi. And then we did a week in Branson, Missouri. Hollister, I guess, actually is where it was.
Mm-hmm.
Across the river from Branson. Then we did a week in El Dorado, Kansas. It's not El Dorado. Don't make that mistake. It is definitely El Dorado.
Mm-hmm.
That's where we are right now.
Yeah. And then headed to Colorado to see our son, see friends, family.
Is it Colorado or Colorado?
I'm not sure. Yeah, and then from there back to Arizona is what we're planning now. So yeah, so I think that's a good plan. You want to highlight each kind of little area that we were at and then just kind of some things that what happened, like, because I think we had something kind of happen. There was notable things, I guess, in every location, and we had a lot of like 1 night or 2 night stops along the way in other areas that we kind of explored. For a couple of hours, we took the time to drive around, took pictures and that kind of a thing. So these places were where we were at for longer, but we had a lot of stops along the way too. So yeah,
Where do you want to start?
I don't know. Well, I guess I'll just start in Arizona because it is one of my most favorite places on earth. And I think looking back, I don't think that we learned as much while we were there. Like we did a little bit, but I don't think we recognized how much we had learned while we were there. I guess it felt more like kind of day-to-day living. Learning how to live in an RV, is something that we certainly did, and some of the challenges. And we went from a smaller RV up into, this bigger fifth wheel that we have now. And so there were challenges and, things that we learned. But I don't think, for me personally, I guess reflecting, I didn't realize how much I was actually learning at the time and how much of that knowledge has applied to all of these months traveling now. And even just the way the park ran and the people that were there, the resort, I guess I took some of that for granted, not knowing anything else. But realizing along the way how, like you mentioned earlier, the difference between like RV parks and resorts and, how there is a big difference, not only with amenities, but quite frankly, like quality of stay. Price, what you're going to pay for staying there for a night or a week or a month. So lots of those things, I guess, we learned along the way. But I just wanted to highlight that about Arizona, that I don't think we realized how much we actually learned and how much information we picked up there at the time. It just felt more like day to day, but we really gained a lot of information while we were there. Okay. Spring Branch.
Spring Branch. Travels to Spring Branch were pretty uneventful.
Mm-hmm.
We did do the 1 night in Rockhound Park in New Mexico, which is beautiful. A whole lot of amenities there. Definitely test if you have a large camper, it'll test your abilities of maneuvering. Pretty tight areas for big campers. And that was our first experience with only 30 amp power. They had some 50 amp sites, but they were all taken except for one that we couldn't get into. That what I had reserved online. It looked like there was plenty of room, and it said it would accommodate a camper our size. But that is one thing that we learned, that
People don't know what 41 feet is.
no, not hooked to a good sized truck.
Yeah, so that's I think one thing that we've become more and more aware of is that when you call to reserve spots and you tell them, hey, the camper's 41 feet, I don't think people really understand what that is. Like, you can tell them 41 feet and they can say, okay, our spot can accommodate that, but I don't think people are taking into consideration that you're like a semi, you're over 50 feet, 53, 55 feet long. And you need way more space to maneuver, to back in, to have enough turning radius. And, so, yeah, we definitely, booked that spot. And I think maybe we could have fit, but it would have been way more frustrating than, so the camp host, she's like, hey, we have another spot up here. Would you like it? And I was like, yes, please. So it was wide open. And, so just a word, yeah, when you're booking, to be cautious of that. Oftentimes they don't know what 41 feet is. And even if their spot says it will accommodate, sometimes that's not necessarily the case.
Yeah, if you can get into the spot, it might accommodate it, but you couldn't get something that long into the spot. Was the issue. Just how the driveway and the road and the ditches were.
Yeah.
But that was our first time with 30 amp hookup. With just 30 amp, because we have a 50 amp. Carmen is a 50 amp rig, so it requires lots of juice for her 41 feet. And that was the first time that we had to use the adapter pieces on the extension cords or on the power cord. So that's something, if you're looking at full timing, is make sure that you have all of the different plug-in adapters for your rig to get you either up to 50 amp service, because some places don't have 30 amp plugins anymore. And then some places don't offer 50 amp, they just offer 30 amp and 20 amp. So you have to make sure that you have all of the right adapters to get your power cable up to 50 or down to 20. That's all the power options that they offer.
That's a good point.
Then from there we went to
Spring Branch.
Yeah, Spring Branch.
And I think we ran into, some trees, like, so low hanging branches. We had to, work together. I think that's something that we're learning too, like because you do the driving. So what is my role, or when we're parking, how can I help? And the camp, the owner there was pulling you in, right, and guiding you, but he wasn't watching the tree branches, and it was a big branch that so that's something too, just keep an eye out for branches. We got it worked out, but we've run into tree issues a lot because we're very tall. I think very tall, 13.6. And so but other than the trees, that wasn't a bad place. It was clean. Not necessarily a ton of amenities, but people there were very friendly, and they were expanding. So lots to do in the area. So we spent a lot of time, and this was kind of our two, I guess it's important to mention that with me working, trying to figure out work schedule versus how are we exploring and how are we, seeing these areas with my work schedule. And so I actually took a week off in between, or at the end of Spring Branch and the beginning of South Padre. So we had that, dedicated time to explore, but that was something that we were kind of running into, how do we move with me still working and still feel like we've got a day or, time to dedicate to getting out. So we made a lot of short trips, I feel like, um, kind of around, but we were exhausted because I felt like we were on the go a lot.
Well, and it was stressful for the first time being out on the road
Mhm.
full time with all of our belongings and the animals not used to traveling. The trip to Arizona, and then they were just that was home for them for 5 months
Mhm.
or 6 months. They were just at home in Arizona at the RV resort. So back out on the road, that was a big adjustment for them.
Mhm.
So it was just stressful, and then just trying to figure out, like you said, how we're going to be able to explore. We didn't know exactly, timeline wise, what kind of time we needed in each area to explore.
Mhm.
So we did Texas in 2 week stays,
Mhm.
which left an open weekend for exploring in between. And then you took that week off in between the
Mhm.
move so that we could get in more exploration. But that San Antonio, New Braunfels area, there's a lot to do and see up there. So
Yeah.
we
I
could-
think we definitely would go back there, like you said before, because there were some things that we didn't feel like maybe we had time or we didn't know until we got there what there was to do. And so you can do a ton of like research on the internet and says, hey, check these places out. But until you really get there, we found that you don't really know what there is to do until you're there. And we find a lot of things to do just by driving around. And so I think we definitely would go back just to spend some more time because we didn't get up to, we didn't get to do some of the things that we wanted to do there because time kind of got away from us. But um, yeah, just I say the short drive from that area down to Port Isabel. That was a shorter drive. Um, and we kind of like those shorter trips, to park. But that park that was considered a resort. It was okay. It was not my favorite. Like I love South Padre, but the resort itself was not my favorite. Um, Had a kind of weird things with them. Like sewer hookups, so you don't use your regular sewer hose. They just hook up. They've got their own PVC pipe that they hook up and like duct tape, and I wasn't real crazy about that. Parking spots for something our size, it was challenging getting because there were power lines right behind us, so we didn't have a ton of room, and the spots were pretty darn
they were
close together.
pretty tight.
But the area itself, I mean, we do love South Padre, probably my second most favorite spot in the United States is South Padre Island. So we took every chance we could get just to go and walk on the beach. And we didn't necessarily feel like we needed to explore there because we've been there for, a couple of times. But that actually felt to me like it was vacation. Like that felt like that was vacation because for me, I felt comfortable there. I knew what was there. I knew the stores. I knew the restaurants. I knew the beach isn't crowded, and we knew where to park, and just all of those things. We knew where the grocery stores were, and so that actually felt like a vacation spot because we had vacation there, and it felt familiar. Um, and I long to go back there because I do love it. Um, I don't necessarily anything crazy. Like we went into Brownsville and kind of drove around and did some things that we hadn't done before, but that wasn't necessarily like a huge exploration point for us. I don't think.
No.
It was relaxing, and I think it gave us a chance to kind of unwind from the first couple of drives and traveling. So I think that was well planned. I still feel like we were exhausted afterwards because we were on the beach like every day or every other day. Like we went a lot, but yeah. Because it's to say, I think it's an underrated place to go with, you know, family and everything, and it's not as touristy. We've been there at several different times of the year, and it's never been, even when it was busy, like it's never been crazy. So I would definitely, not that I want to have a whole bunch of people going, but
The wine at Dairy Queen does get pretty long.
it does. People do love Dairy Queen there. So from there, then we went up, we stayed a night outside of Houston, right?
Yes.
And actually I'm having a hard time remembering that place. Oh, that was Columbus.
Yeah, it was outside of Columbus.
Yeah, so Columbus, Texas was an amazing little town. I thought we took a ton of pictures. We were only there for, you know, overnight, but that was a nice park. Now I remember that was a nice place that we stayed.
Easy on, easy off, right off the interstate.
Uh-huh. That was a place, was that the place where we couldn't put our awnings out because we were so close? Or that was another,
No,
no, that was
so-
Florida. Yeah, but Columbus, the town of Columbus, Texas, boy, it felt like
That was your little Mayberry.
that was like Mayberry. It was like, it was clean. It was, I know there's a ton of history there, and the buildings, just the architecture and the way people pride in ownership definitely showed. So, and then from there we went to Lafayette, Louisiana. And boy, that was such a tough drive over there.
We had the tire issue on the truck. The holes in the tire in the truck. So we did our second day of travel over there with the spare on the truck because we couldn't find another tire on, what was it? That was a Friday night. It was a Friday night. We couldn't find another tire in
Memorial weekend too.
yes.
So it was Memorial Day weekend and a Friday night. And yeah, so bulge in the tire, couldn't find another one. And so, yeah, so that was an issue driving. And then we got to the campground and got plugged in and everything. And I was like, man, I smell something. And turns out one of our ACs was on fire.
It was a little dark and crunchy inside once I tore it apart. It smelled terrible.
I'm glad that we got it shut off at the time that we did, though, because it could have caused a lot more issues, but it was scary how black and melted everything was in a relatively short period of time. So
Learned real quick that wires rub together when they're not installed properly, when they're bouncing down the road. There's always going to be maintenance to do when you're bouncing down the road. I think they said it's like a 3.8 or a 4.0 on the Richter scale of a earthquake anytime you take a camper down the road. So it's a pretty rough ride for all the contents and the structure of the roads. Not in the best shape. So.
And we spent a month in Lafayette, and I know I've gotten a lot of flack about this, but it was not my favorite time. And even now I could look back and say it wasn't my favorite time. Not crazy. We tried to do a lot of exploring around Louisiana. And while I think the culture is there, and I think there's a lot to learn, I just felt like there wasn't pride in ownership. It felt, and I'll just say it felt dirty and gross. And I didn't feel that people were as friendly. I thought the places that we ate for food, most of them were gross. It was, I don't know how to explain it. We were there for a month and ready to just get out of there and leave. We also learned, that one thing that I think we maybe took for granted is that when you're traveling and you're in new places, you don't have your regular mechanic. You don't have your regular tire shop. That even though tire shops, some of them are like franchises and throughout the United States, it's still hard to find them when you need them. And we looked for several places and talked to a lot of, not a lot, several shops, and just the prices that they were charging were outrageous. But you don't have your normal grocery stores. You don't have any of the normal stuff that, quite frankly, that I think that you take for granted when you have a home or you're parked in your RV. So that was challenging just to find a place for tires. And groceries and restaurants, and it felt like maybe the area that we were in, there wasn't a ton to do. And Lafayette is, would you say, per capita, like the highest ratio of restaurants?
Yeah, restaurants.
But they're like fast food. Like
There's
it
a lot of
was,
fast food, and there was a lot of stuff that was still closed down. So I don't know.
yeah,
The COVID stuff is the protocols is definitely still
in that area.
alive, and yeah. Well, or whatever, I don't know what you want to call it, but a lot of stuff closed down. And a lot of business that were closed down that just didn't make it through COVID. I don't think, with all the restrictions, people had just ended up going out of business. So
Yeah.
there was definitely a lot of closed restaurants down
Mhm.
there. Stuff that you could look online and find reviews from 6 months ago, and it shows their hours of business, and you show up, and apparently that was their last day of business because it's been boarded up for a while. So we ran into that a lot.
Yeah. Yeah. I was just ready to get out of Louisiana. I didn't care for it much. And so then we left there and we went to Foley, Alabama. And the park that we were in, not the kind of lifestyle I want to live.
A lot of, I don't know, it was people with no pride and ownership, for starters, or very little, but it was a lot of older, rundown campers. It wasn't.
I don't know how people were living in them. They were falling apart. It was not even older, and I think that goes with the pride and ownership plus. I think income and financial knowledge, I think, plays a part in some of that too. With the amount of rain that they get there, like campers are not meant to be in that type of humidity and subjected to that amount of moisture and rain. And so I could almost guarantee that none of them had dehumidifiers or anything inside. And so they were completely falling down. But I mean, on top of that, I think it was just everything.
Wasn't the best park, but the area itself was magnificent. So.
Yeah, the area was nice. The park itself wasn't. But there was a lot to do there. And first time in Gulf Shores. And that was nice. It was a little bit touristy for me, and we actually felt like the beaches weren't that great. People are like, oh, the beaches are so awesome. And we actually felt it was a little bit coarse, and they were not our favorite.
They are beautiful. They're white. They have white sand beaches. I've not ever seen sand beaches that white before, but they are beautiful to look at. But walking on them is not all that pleasant. I think they're white because it's crushed up seashells or something. I'm not sure, but a little rough.
Yeah, we did several places and then went into like Pensacola, and did Pensacola Beach, and it's hugely another big touristy area. Found a couple like smaller bars, restaurants and bars with live music that was really entertaining. There a ton of things to do there. And we were there for a month too. And driving around and a lot of exploring and found some areas that we really loved. We went to Dolphin Island, which we didn't find that it was as great as maybe what the reviews maybe were.
It was more of a local spot. It's where the locals went to go to the beach. It was out there. It was not as touristy, not as, there was great big long sand beaches, but there wasn't like all the amenities on the beach that you would
Mhm.
find at like all the, Gulf Shores or Pensacola. There's lots of big hotels and stuff sitting on the beach. This was more it's almost like you drive through a park or something and you get out to the beach. It was not.
Mhm. Well, one thing I think that turned us off there too is that animals are allowed on the beach, and there were a lot of dogs, and that was kind of gross. Because we have found people do not clean up after their animals. But also even there, I think because it was like the 2 days after we were there or something, they had the big fishing competition.
Yeah.
And so that could have been really fun to see, but we weren't able, to go and participate. So I think if you could catch it on like one of those times where there was something going on, that might be fun. We did Fort Morgan. That was really interesting to tour and to just walk around. Fort Morgan, like that's clear out like the farthest place out in Alabama.
Right at the mouth of what's that? Mobile Bay.
Yeah.
That's kind of what separates Mobile Bay from the
Mhm.
Gulf of Mexico, and it's huge in history. It's super neat. It is a state park, I believe,
Mhm.
but it's worth the entry fee to get in to walk through the museum and explore the fort. And then there's actually a beach out there that you can sit on I guess
Mhm.
on both sides, on the Gulf side and the Bay side. So
Yeah. Yeah, I'm glad we did that. That was a lot of fun. We spent all day there too. Just walking around taking pictures and learning, and we're not necessarily huge history buffs and certainly not war buffs, but it was really interesting to see all the stuff that they had there and just to learn about it. Um, and I mean, even up close where we were staying, just going out to like some of the local places, watch people fish. They were catching little sharks, and that was interesting for me to see them pulling in all these great white sharks. Just like the little guys, though. Some of them were bigger,
bigger.
but
I don't know if they were great whites, but
oh, weren't they?
I don't know,
I thought that's what they said they were.
what they look like. But I don't know. Maybe so.
I don't know. That's what they were calling them. I assume they're locals. They would know. Maybe not. But anyways,
From there, we went to
we stayed in
stop the night in Georgia.
Tallahassee,
Oh, Tallahassee. Yeah.
Florida.
So close that we couldn't put our awnings out without hitting the
Yeah.
camper next to us. They were packed in there super tight.
Yeah.
It was a good sized park,
Mm-hmm.
but maneuverability was not designed for campers our size. And then once you got into this spot, then it was super tight.
Yeah. The area we thought that we might want to go back to because there was it looked like a lot of things to do in the area, and we just didn't have the time since we were just there overnight. Then
That was where we learned to double check your slides. Make sure there's nothing on top of your slides when you
oh yeah.
close up.
Oh,
There was a little frog that had made its way on top of our slide, and he got squished in the.
but it didn't kill him. Like
He was stuck in
his head and his
front gasket, the rubber gasket.
Yeah, and when I opened it up, he crawled himself out. So yeah, really gotta check your slides before you pull them in. And then we stayed a night in Georgia. And actually that park was crazy. It was a beautiful place, but holy hell, trying to get the hills like and the turns, like it was spread out. but just the terrain was really tough for something
was
our
intense.
size and our weight like that.
They
Yeah.
say they're big rig friendly, but we learned that that doesn't necessarily mean everybody has a different definition of what a big rig is.
Mm-hmm.
You take that, pickup and then the big trailer behind it, and you take it through a steep dip and then back up a hill, and the back end of your camper's almost dragging on the ground as your pickup's going up the hill, and it's putting strain and pressure on your hitch and your truck, and
Mm-hmm.
it makes popping and squeaking noises that make you cringe a little bit.
Yeah. It was a nice place and our spot was pretty nice. And that was actually probably one of my most, I'll say, favorite like chill evenings after a day of travel though, because we had planned beforehand that we weren't going to go out to eat. We were just gonna we had bought frozen pizzas the night before. So we stopped at a grocery store and bought some beer and frozen pizzas. And when we got there, like we just put in the pizzas and sat outside and read and ate frozen pizza and drank a couple of beers. And that was probably, and then we went and got ice cream and filled up with fuel. But that was probably one of my most favorite, just like chill nights because the location was nice. It was clean. Like the park was, there was just stuff to look at. Favorite.
Yeah, that was a
evenings.
resort as well.
Hmm.
They had the swimming pool and clubhouse, and other amenities,
Yeah. But
paved roads.
yeah, that was nice. And then so we left there and that's where we went to Columbia, South Carolina and stayed for a month. And that place was actually called Big Rig Friendly Resort. And so when we booked it online, they're listing all of their amenities and everything, right? And you don't realize until you get there that they were just building it. None of those amenities existed. And so I was a little bit annoyed that we paid the prices that we paid for no amenities.
Yeah, we paid resort prices
We-
for the month.
Yeah, and there were nothing.
Looking at $1,000, right at $1,000 a month, plus electricity. It's right at $1,000, and there was no.
There was sewer and water hookups and electric at the spot, but we had to trim the trees to be able to get our slides out. And they were very helpful with that and said, trim up, but we cleaned up the area, rakes, not we, you did. You cleaned up the dead, the leaves and the branches. It was a very wooded area. And so cleaned up all the trash. There were no restrooms, there were no bathhouses, there was no, they said pool, definitely not a pool. There, like literally nothing. They said they had great Wi-Fi, their Wi-Fi didn't work. And so that was, I think, a big learning lesson from us too, that when we're calling and if we're looking for these amenities, to be asking at the time that we're making these calls to verify that they actually have them. And we've even asked, and because you do most of the booking, ask about Wi-Fi because I need Wi-Fi to be able to work. And while I've got the jetpack, which has proven to not been reliable and not great, I thought, oh, they said, hey, we've got great Wi-Fi. Well, it didn't work when we got there. And so that just feels like that's been a huge frustration over these travels is internet access for work, because I have to have it. And so we're now on our second different type of Wi-Fi or internet access. So just the thing, don't trust if they say they've got Wi-Fi. Don't trust it.
You might be able to check your email, but you won't be able to watch Netflix or anything like that.
Or do any kind of, Zooms or anything that uploading pictures, like we've found that none of that works. Even with the jetpack with Verizon, we have found that to be very challenging and have had a tremendous amount of difficulty with that. But I was a little bit annoyed with, that resort and bouncing around, but would say it was clean. And they were very friendly, but the roads, there were a lot of rusty nails and old saw blades and stuff laying all over in the roads. And so every time we walked, literally picking up big piles of nails and everything. I loved it that our spots were very large. And so we were spread out from our neighbors and we could actually, we built a fire ring and put lights out. And so I liked it that there was a lot of room in between. So they weren't cramped in there. Plenty of room for getting in and out of the spots, I thought.
Well, whoever got that spot after we left got really quite a nice spot. Spent probably 15, 20 hours building that site, cleaning up all of the brush and taking down the trees and building the fire ring and leveling the ground and getting the astroturf put down so that we had a place that, we could walk out. When we first got there, you couldn't put the stairs down on the camper all the way because you were hitting trees and it was off the edge of the site. The pad was barely big enough to fit the camper. And then you put the stairs out and you couldn't get down to level ground. So leveled all of that and got the fire ring and the astroturf down and did it in with for the
right, for all
20
the
hours
work.
of work that put into to build that site.
Right. Around that, well, there was quite a bit to do around the area. I mean, we hiked through Congaree National Park, and that was scary because we were literally like less than 50 yards away. Probably, I don't know, it's less than that, of enormous alligators, and there was no barriers. So we saw the enormous alligators swimming and spiders the size of spiders that I've never seen before. Like,
That's what I was not concerned with the alligators. The amount of spiders and how big they were absolutely terrified me.
And I took a lot of pictures of them because they were fascinating, like completely fascinating to me. And then we're hiking out and caught the sight of something, thought maybe it was a deer, turns out wild hogs. That freaked me out because those things are mean. And I was amazed at how quiet they were until they took off running. So, but that was fun to do. Charleston, we absolutely loved Charleston, and we only had a day there. Definitely on our list to go back to.
That was about an hour and a half drive from where we were staying, so it was a hike to get out there. But Charleston area is, for the city, beautiful.
Yeah. So we definitely want to go back and actually explore more and look around and spend some time there. Actually stay and spend some time there. Because total pride and ownership, clean. Just, I don't know, just felt like a lot of stuff to do. And I mean, food around South Carolina too, actually. Like, I thought the food was duck donuts. Yeah. Yeah, I don't know. Some of the most friendly people, like everybody would stop and say hello, like some of the most friendly people I've ever met in my whole life as a collective, like as a whole in South Carolina. So that was neat to see. And then we went from there to northern Alabama. So stayed a week in northern Alabama. So
right on the Tennessee border.
And that park was that wasn't bad. It was a park. It was clean. People were pretty friendly. I would say fairly affordable. Absolutely no cell service there. We went into Tennessee, so we went to like the Jack Daniel's distillery and we went to Nashville. I think there was a ton of stuff to do there. And a week. While we were there for a week, we really only had like 2 days to explore because of work. And so 2.5 really.
Yeah.
So we had to really pack a lot of stuff into a short amount of time.
In Nashville one day, we did the Jack Daniel's distillery the next.
That was actually Labor Day weekend, so we had an extra day
Yeah.
to go around. But yeah, we just I'm even forgetting what else we did. We hit a couple of smaller places.
Can't remember what
What?
down.
So,
Yep. There you go.
so yeah, Huntsville, their downtown area, that was pretty fun. Really beautiful area down with like water and fountains and
Stream that runs through.
yeah, so that was really nice. Their downtown area was clean. There was quite a few things to do, I thought. So yeah, so we did that. Those spots were pretty large for the RV um and then we went to from there, we went to
Mississippi.
yeah, and that was our first experience with chiggers or something. I don't know, but holy hell, the bugs. It was awful.
We learned a lot about insects in the South. They're no joke. Every single place has their own mean insect. Alabama, it was the fire ants. I got into them while I was,
Mhm.
that was one of those mow your own sites since we were a monthly rental. And so I was out there mowing and trying to do some maintenance on the camper and the grass because there wasn't a pad, and got into some fire ants. Very, very unpleasant experience there.
Mhm. Yeah, but the location where we were at, Hernando Point, it was actually beautiful and the lake was amazing. Um, we had armadillos that came and visited at night and you got chased by one. Um,
Probably thought I had food or something because they were not afraid of people. So I don't know if people were feeding them or what, but
yeah. They were very friendly. And what we learned too in Mississippi though, um, is that super friendly, but they actually wanted to stop and have a conversation, like hours long conversations. And so while South Carolina, people were very friendly and hello, it was like a hello, hey, we got a lot of compliments on like tattoos and clothing and like your beard. And like people are like, hey, have a great day. But Mississippi was like, hey, we want to tell you our whole life story. And that was interesting. So we actually, well, not so much me. I didn't mind it as much, but you found yourself not wanting to say hello because you knew it was going to be, you were going to be with them for an hour. And
yeah, there was
so,
no getting away from it. Had something else to do. You were stuck talking,
mhm.
or you tried walking away, they would follow you back to your campsite talking.
Yeah. So,
Gentleman invite himself over for a beer.
yeah. Yes. um, but it was a beautiful location. Um, the bugs, that was interesting. Um, I'm trying to remember, so that's when we went into Memphis. And that was like right after the attack on the lady runner. So I was a little bit nervous going into Memphis because there was that, and there was like a lot of things happened like the week that we were there, or the week right before we got there. A lot of really brutal things happened in Memphis. And so I'll be honest, I was a little bit leery of going in, but we did, and we walked like around Beale Street. Amazing. Like it was amazing. Once people, because we were there on a Sunday, and so it started out really slow. Um, it once more people came out, like, and the places started opening. We got a couple of drinks. We just found some really cool places. Um, and that was fun. I don't know. Kind of wish we would have had a little bit more time there, but um probably a place that we would go back to.
Probably.
I would go back with, maybe some friends or something just to experience it. Maybe, on an evening or when there's more things going on. I think it could be really fun. Um, but, and then from there, we went to
Hollister, Missouri.
Hollister, Missouri.
I think I said in the beginning of the video across the river, but it's not actually a river, it's across the lake.
Yeah. from
from
Branson.
Branson.
And that drive, was it the drive over there that was really
It was the
challenging?
drive over there that was pretty challenging. We had the
So many things.
truck issues and road
Yes,
debris issues. And
a lot of stuff happened, and if you don't follow us on social media, I mean, I went through a lot of that, but just like the back window of the truck broke, the cables broke. There was a noise that we couldn't figure out where it was coming from, so we weren't sure if the hitch was falling apart or if the camper was falling apart or the truck's falling apart. Like there was a noise that was concerning, but we couldn't ever figure out what it was while we were driving, so we just kept going. We had a semi in front of us hit a piece of road jerky that came back and hit us and knocked the sewer the sewer cap and secondary valve off and spewed sewer water all over. That was gross. And stop along the highway to try and put that back on. People don't move over. And went through Arkansas, which Arkansas roads I thought were some of the worst. Louisiana roads were probably the worst. Arkansas, I think, is a close second on that. So a lot of bumping, and then we got a mile down the road from the sewer thing and stopped at a rest stop to get off. And look, there we had another tire with a big bulge, so it was getting ready to blow. So then we had to change a tire. I was cranky. That was a rough day.
and coming north out of Little Rock through the hills and the lane curvy, windy, up and down 45 miles an hour on motorcycles pulling in front of you and then slamming on the brakes. And
I started to get motion sickness just because it was more hilly in the curves. And oh, that was, so when we got stopped in Branson, I was just like done. But Branson, so and this video is getting really long, so if you stuck with us for this long, thank you. But Branson, I had pictured in my head that it was like this really rinky-dink little town that old people went to that had like a theater, and maybe, I don't know if I thought casinos or not, I have no idea, but I really legit thought it was just this place that had a couple of like nursing homes like that people stayed in. I'm not even kidding. Like, and that they went and watched like some old time shows. So wrong. So wrong. We had a really good time in Branson actually, and got to see some free concerts, some of the best music I've seen, certainly for a free show. Just a lot going on, and it was a little bit intimidating. It was a little bit overwhelming. I didn't feel like it was hard to find information on things like how do things work. Especially for like, you know, do you buy like a wristband? Do you pay for this and you get all these attractions? Do you not? Like, so that felt a little bit overwhelming for me, just not knowing what to do. One thing that we're running into is that because one of our main exploration days and experience days are Sundays, that so many places are closed or they don't open until later. So when we are traveling more, we might have to adjust some of our days because I don't feel like we're getting as much on Sundays. But Branson was really pretty cool actually, and the surrounding area. Plus Menards. They have a Menards. I haven't been to a Menards in like 2 years. My favorite store ever. I love Menards. And so they had one. So we were there like 2 or 3 times in the week. Three times in the week. Yeah. And then we made it to base El Dorado, which is pretty close to Wichita, Kansas. And I don't know, I'll be honest, I'm kind of indifferent. I don't know that I would come back here. We're in a nice
we're in a nice
location,
location. It is a nice park.
a really nice park, no amenities.
They have a tornado shelter.
They have a tornado shelter. They
So
do.
they do have amenities.
Some people are pretty friendly. It's clean. There's not a ton to do around this area, it doesn't feel like. We went into Wichita. I don't know. Maybe if we had some more time and could,
It was another Sunday of exploration, so a lot of stuff was closed. So that was
yeah, and there's a lot of just walking around like some of the downtown area and everything. Um, a large amount of homeless people that they didn't really bother, but there was a lot. It was pretty dirty. Like the buildings were neat, but the the streets and everything else, like just clothing and beer bottles and broken glass and cigarette butts, like it was trashy. So that was a little bit disheartening. Um, Maybe if we had some more time, maybe there would be some other things to do, but I'm really just kind of indifferent about this area. I don't know that I would choose to come back here. Um, Maybe some other areas of Kansas, but this area, I don't think I would come back. Um, so, um, of a recap of the locations and actually what I might do, guys, because this has been really long. So maybe stay tuned for part two, where we'll talk more about what we've learned, and just some other things, I guess, that we've learned more in depth along the way. So thank you for tuning in this time and stay tuned to the next episode.